Why are 90% of all new firefighters in the city of Boston white when the city is 53% minority? Well, that is one of the many questions our next guest is asking. Now, last week, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice and the Boston Society of Vulcans called upon the city of Boston to take proactive steps to improve racial and gender diversity and to demonstrate that diversity, in fact, is a top priority for the city. Now, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice has also called for action to be taken regarding the amount of hate and racial comments that have seemed to spread all over social media, especially on Facebook in recent years. They've formally raised their concern on that topic as well. And just earlier this week, the organization held a press conference explaining that they are suing President Donald Trump on behalf of the cities of Lawrence and Chelsea. Here to update us on all their work this week is attorney Ivan Espinoza-Madrigal. He is the executive director for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice. Busy month for you, my friend?
Well, thank you, Alberto, for inviting me to join you. But yes, it's been pretty busy. You know, at the Lawyers Committee, we are the legal arm of low-income communities, communities of color, and immigrant communities. And so we've had our hand in a lot of different things, as you mentioned. You know, we've been taking a close look at what's happening with the firefighters, for example.
Yeah, let's start with that, because I did get a chance to speak to the mayor last week, and he recognized that it was an issue. How did that all begin? And tell the viewers, if you're not aware, what was your main concern?
Yeah, so the main concern that we have is the lack of diversity in the fire department. You know, some city agencies like the Boston Police, you know, are still lagging behind the fact that we are a majority-minority city. But we've made some progress with the cops, but it seems like so much attention has been focusing on some of those public agencies, but not so much on the fire departments. And so we wanted to bring the spotlight on the absence of diversity.
So what's happening there? Is it that candidates of color are not taking the civil service exam? Are they being bypassed? What is the gist of what you think has led to this big disparity in that particular department?
I think it's a constellation, including some of the factors that you mentioned. It's a combination of people in the community not seeing the fire department reflective of them and therefore not applying for work there, kind of like, well, I'm not sure if I'm welcome there. And then we also have an issue with the residency requirements. You have to be a resident of Boston for just 1 year. Well, that means that it could be, you know, very competitive for native Bostonian sons and daughters to get into the force. They're not as prioritized as, let's say, somebody who might have just come into the city and barely filled the residency requirement. We think that a good way to work this forward is to make the residency requirement 3 years, so that we can create more opportunities for the folks who've been longer-term residents in Boston.
How about outreach in these communities? I really don't see much of a message in these communities when the civil service exam comes up. It kind of like comes and goes, and people in our community don't even know about it.
Yeah, it's the best kept secret. Right? And so I think we can get in front of that by doing exactly what you said, advertising it, promoting it, putting it in publications that other folks read, specifically ethnic communities, and also maybe launching a cadet program, which has been a hallmark of recent police diversity efforts, but we don't have a cadet program with the fire department. And so if it's working for the cops, why not replicate the cadet program? It's not like everybody coming through the cadet program is a person of color, but it's a good vehicle for outreach and cultivating people who can eventually come into the department and help to diversify it.
Good. All right, I want to switch gears here because I have you here now, and I think it was Wednesday afternoon, you held a press conference and you explained that you are suing President Donald Trump on behalf of the cities in Lawrence. Explain that.
Yes, you know, Alberto, there's been a lot of uncertainty at the federal level. We've seen that particularly with what's happening at the airports, where we have the detention and interrogation of primarily Muslim American folks. And so this is not just something that's happening in an airport to people who are trying to fly in from Muslim countries. We have things that are happening in our own backyard, in our own community, where some of our communities and families feel that they're under attack. The president passed an executive order shortly after he got into office, and it said that he was going to be defunding sanctuary cities, cities like Chelsea and Lawrence, who we represent, that have policies that protect immigrants.
So you're taking this all the way up, if you have to, right? To
That's
court.
right. We have to take the civil rights struggle from the streets into the courtroom. And so this is our effort to hold the federal government accountable and to make sure that our communities like Lawrence, Chelsea, and a dozen of other communities in Massachusetts are being protected, and that way show to folks on the ground that that there are folks creating a shield between them and some really nasty policies coming from the federal government right now.
Okay. Now, lastly, I did see an information that came through my desk a couple weeks ago about your office calling for, I guess I don't want to put words into your mouth, but you guys were concerned with all the hatred, especially on the racial side of comments on Facebook. So what can you do about that, and what are you doing about it? How do you even go about trying to curb that?
Well, that's connected to some of the other pieces that we've been talking about, right? As the Lawyers Committee, we do a lot of work to fight discrimination and to fight hate. And so we've seen a lot of manifestations of hate after the election coming through just ordinary people, but they're using social media to amplify some really hateful messages. And so we need to make sure that we're monitoring social media so that people aren't threatening people with violence or hate crimes, that they're not using social media to bully and intimidate, whether it's children or other community members. And so we're calling on Facebook and on Twitter to step up and make sure that they're not laboratories for bigotry in terms of hate crime, social media bullying.
So you're an attorney, and you obviously represent an organization that really works with the law. How do you straddle that line between First Amendment, freedom of speech, and censorship, and the hate speech that you were talking about?
As somebody who's in the media, I'm sure that's something that you've wrestled with, and I think it's a very good question. The bottom line is that we're all entitled to First Amendment free speech protections. That's wonderful that we have those constitutional principles, but those principles don't just exist in a vacuum. You can't just go into a crowded place and start screaming fire, or you can't threaten people with imminent violence. And so what we've been seeing is that through social media, we've had some, I think they call them like social media trolls, who go around targeting even really popular people, actors or politicians, who are taking stands against some of the wave of hate that's happened in the country after the election, and they get targeted. And so that's not fair. The marketplace of ideas should be open to all of us. None of us should be bullied into silence. Just like the sanctuary cities, like Chelsea and Lawrence, shouldn't be bullied into doing something the federal government wants just because they disagree with the policies they have on the ground. So it's about protecting people's rights.
Okay, and a little bit more about your organization, because you guys are constantly disseminating a lot of information. You do it through the emails, you do it through appearances like here, and so forth. But in a certain way, you're in here in Boston, you're here to ruffle the feathers a little bit here. You're not really here to make friends. I mean, you're kind of shaking up the establishment a little bit, aren't you? I mean, do you consider that? Have you felt that a little bit?
Well, yes. I think in some ways, the Lawyers Committee, we've been around for a very long time. We were founded at the height of the civil rights movement at the request of President Kennedy back in '68. And so we've been around for a long time, and we desegregated many of the public institutions in Massachusetts. But, I think we grew a little bit sleepy. And when I took over the helm of the Lawyers Committee almost two years ago now, we were going to wake up the sleeping giant and shake the tree and make sure that people knew that these racial justice, as these civil rights issues are right here in our own backyard, and that we need to step up.
So this is part of your mission statement. And the only reason I bring that up is because I see you doing what I think you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yes, that's what we are doing.
Okay.
We have to hold public entities accountable. We have to fight discrimination. We have to fight the spread of hate. And we have to use the law as an instrument to protect our communities, families, and children.
All right. Well, thank you for coming by, and I'm sure you'll be invited back on during the year as these issues
Thank you,
flesh out.
Alberto.
All right.
It's wonderful.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you. All right, everyone. I think this was another great edition of Urban Update for all of you here. Oh, by the way, yes, that was me on the duck boats during the parade last week. I snuck on. More information at a later date. For now, everybody, have a great Sunday.